Hello everyone, welcome back to Path for Cloud. So in today's video, we will gonna discuss the CRDs. CRDs are nothing, they are just custom resource definition. Let me just make a note. So before we jump into the custom resource definition file, let's try to understand what is resource definition. Because as the name suggests, custom, like maybe being a Kubernetes administrator or maybe a developer, right? If you have a sufficient right, that you can customize those resource definition file. But in order to customize, let's understand first what is resource definition. So resource definition is nothing like so far whatever that object we have created, we have used all these YAML files, right? So these YAML files are nothing. These are just a resource definition file, right? So you can see that this is the resource. What resource I'm creating? I'm creating a pod and it is getting served under this API version, which we already understood, and it has some schema defined, like what is the spec, what is the kind, and under spec also what are the name of that property and whether that property is accepting a value as a string or maybe as an integer or maybe is there any limit, right? You can define how long character or maybe a maximum to that particular all the. So these are the resource definition file which we have already created, right? And these are coming as a part of your installation. If I just run KAPI resources, right? Okay, RESOURCS. So we can see that there are hell lot of already pre-built definitions, or maybe I would say that API is already there with their particular definition files, the kind, whether the scope is namespaced or non-namespaced, what is the version, whether we have any short name is integrated with that particular name or not, right? So these are coming as a part of your Kubernetes cluster installation, right? But what if you need to extend the capability of your cluster, right? So there are a way you can extend it. That's what we have discussed when we were discussing these API versions, right? These are the core API version which we have seen here, right? Then maybe someone felt okay, there may be a kind of cron job or job should be the functionality inside your cluster. So what they have done is they have extended this V1 core API functionality under the class called batch. They have created this. Similarly, they have created a cert manager, discovery, flow control, networking, RBAC authorization. So all these are already there, right? But still, there are multiple resources, multiple things beyond all these things which you can extend and you can use inside your cluster, right? And why we cannot include all these? Because that depends on the use case. Might be I am using, let's say I'm using a monitoring as a Splunk, right? So I will just introduce a Splunk CRD inside my cluster. Might be you are using a, let's say, Grafana or Prometheus, right? So you can extend that capability inside your cluster, right? So that totally depends on your use case. What is the requirement for you, and based on that you can define all these resources. Yes, you can define these custom resource definition files, because what is happening is whenever you are defining these CRDs, right? So they are getting created inside your cluster, right? They have some predefined schemas, they have some predefined parameters, they have some predefined some versions, right? The kind, API version, the group, already we have already defined in this, and basis on those CRDs, the API version group, we can create our what? We can create our custom resources. Because so far we have created our resources like pod deployment and everything that we have created as a part of resource definition, which is already there inside your cluster. But whenever you need to extend the capability, right? Let's say if I go to the our nodes, so that's what I have mentioned here. It is the way to extend Kubernetes with your own resource type, like whenever you wanted to do, right? So beyond the built-in ones like pod, service, deployment, replica set, those are already there. But if you want to extend this capability, let's say you want to create some resources for the database backup, right? Because as of now, what is happening is whenever I am saying kubectl, let me just clear it. Let's say I am just saying k run nginx dash dash image equal to nginx. So what it is doing is it is actually creating a pod, right? It is creating a pod and it is getting served with this image. That's what we are. So who is responsible for this? For this, responsible is API version is V1. That is already defined. But what if I need a functionality where I want, say, let's say I have created a resource called backup, custom resource called backup, right? And the moment I have created the custom resource backup, I will define my resource in such a way, let's say if I just say backup, right? And then it has a requirement to accept, okay, which pod or maybe the application you wanted to backup, right? That you need to pass. And the moment you will pass it, in actual at the background, those resources got backed up, right? That's what we can do it. And that is something possible with the help of custom resource definition file. And once you have that custom resource definition, like where you have defined all the schemas, all the versions, whatever the requirement thing for this to work, then you can create this custom resource, right? But the story is not over, guys. Why? So far, we have understood when we were discussing the Kubernetes architecture, right? There we have understood that we have something called controller, right? So what controller? We have a lot of controller. We have replication controller. We have the deployment controller, right? So what the purpose of those stuff is when you create a replica set, so that controller will read this. With the help of replica set resource definition file, we are able to create a resource called replica set, but we have a controller already running in the background which will go and exec or actually create a replica set, right? In real time, right? So here also the same thing. If you have the custom resource definition file and if you have created a custom resource using this CRD, that doesn't mean that your resource will actually spin up in the background. No, to make it work, you need a controller, right? And same way for that we call it custom controller, right? Now let's finish the theory first and then maybe we'll jump into the demo. So what is custom controller? See, controller is something which is already there and these are mostly written in the Golang. Okay, you can write in Ansible, you can write in the Helm chart as well, right? Helm chart we will see later in this course. Ansible, I have already some basic video in my YouTube, like what Ansible is. If you wanted to understand, then just go and watch those. And the Golang is already one of the language, right, where the actual logic for this controller is written inside this, right? They have something called config client functions or the API, which will actually creating your resources, right? And if you want to make this logic work, which we just taken as a kind of analogy, the backup, then you need to define your custom controller in the Go language, right? But generally, being an administrator, you don't get this task. But if you do that, then you need to have the uh, your expertise in the Golang, right? But I am not, I don't know the Golang very much, right? Just the basic stuff I know. But the problem is when you don't know the Golang, right? Then you cannot write your controller, right? There are ways you can get the controller. How you can get the controller? Because we have already something called predefined stuff in the uh, operators have, right? But that comes as a operator, right? I will not club the operator in this video, but just let me give you answer in one line what operator is. See, what you need to do is, in order to make your resources, right, in order to get that whatever that thought you are carrying in your mind to make that custom thing work, what you need two things. You need a CRD and you need a controller, right? There are way. Simply what you can do is you can write your custom resource definition file, and you can write your controller in the Golang, and you can download the Golang, you can build it, and you can run it locally on that system, right? And then whenever you are creating the custom resource, right, so custom resource knows, okay, you have this CRD already defined, so I am fine, I can go and on this, right? But Kubernetes doesn't know all these. They cannot, it cannot validate those resources actually, right? It cannot create those, though it can make those resources as a like kind of the configuration entry in the etcd database, but in actual it will not. So in to get those resources spin up, right, this again the controller, we have some internal mechanism for the Golang which will listen those resources and will get the action whatever you have defined in that controller, right? That is the way that you can, but it is again always you need to run this controller as a manual thing for the go build, and then you need to run as a kind of script. But that I don't want. I want to make it available across all cluster, maybe to across all different cluster, or maybe I want to contribute in the community, right? So what you can do is you can write your own controller, you can write your own CRDs, and what it will do is it will be bundled as a something called operator, right? And these operators are nothing, they are kind of plugin which you can install inside your cluster, right? They have a different mechanism which will be uh, see in the next video when I discuss the operator, maybe the OLM, which is nothing, the operator lifecycle management. They will have different capabilities which will take care of your operator. And using the CRDs, under the CRDs, you can define some custom resources. Let's say you want a service account with cluster role and cluster role binding. Maybe you need a dedicated namespace, right? Maybe you need some config map, maybe you need some secret, right? So all these things, whatever that the particular thing you wanted to achieve, right, basis on that you can define all these things, and you can create your custom controller, and then you can bundle this as an operator, and you can install this operator inside your cluster, and you will have this function, right? So CRD is nothing, CRDs is just to get the things working beyond whatever is already there, right? And there is a way, right? This is the file which we generally like we write this custom resource definition file. So this is the API extension, right? So the name itself suggests, if you want to extend the whatever that the current Kubernetes can do, you need to define this custom resource definition file. This is just the name of the CRD, and under the spec section there are multiple parameters, there are multiple properties which you can define, right? Again, it is a use case, there is no such specific or the standard template which you can follow. It purely depends on your requirement, like what exactly you wanted to do, right? So let's say the scope is always whenever when we run that API resources, right, what it will do, it will give you a namespace column, right? So here you can see some are true, some are false. So similarly, if you know that, okay, what is the requirement and what is the privilege you need for your resource, basis on that you can define namespace or a non-namespace. Then you just need to give a group. Group is nothing that the name, like kind we that the API version which we are defining, right? So this is the version, like my CRD version 1 as a API version. Then you just need to define the names, like what all the those stuff for that. name is nothing that the kind. So kind you can give like the pod deployment we have. Similarly, you can give your kind and the singular and plural, right? Why? Because you can see that plural name of your kind is always used by this API resources, right? Let's say if you can see the pods, right? So it is pods. But when I run the k get pods, it is also running. And when I just say k get pod, that is also running, right? So that is the way, like it is accepting both singular and plural string, whether it's a pods or pod or whatever the kind you are defining, right? That is the reason like we are defining it as a singular name of your type or a plural. If you have some short name, right? That also we have seen, like I have this CM for the config map, right? If you have that particular defined short name, then you can give that short name so that instead of uh, using the full name of your kind, you can just name as a short name. Then you that the version we are talking about, like V1, V2, what is the version? This is not the version which we get as a API version, right? It is a normal version, right? Whenever you are deploying any kind of software or the application, right? You keep on enhancing it, right? And on the basis of that, just to categorize, like just to summarize, what we do is we just tagged it as a version 1, version 2. So like that you can define your version. And this is the most important two properties is served and storage. Right? I will explain it when we do our demo. But served is something when you put true, right? So that means that another resources can access can interact with this version using this served as a true, right? If you are doing, so that means that let's say if you have multiple versions, right, and you wanted to uh, serve this particular version as a main version, then you can set it to true. So whatever the version is, v1, v2, alpha, beta, gamma, that will be served as a true, right? Storage true means if you put it true, right, that means that for this version, whatever the resource will get created, they will get added in your etcd database, right? Then we have the schema, which is this one. Then we need to define some object. What object is, like whatever we are giving under this scape, like we have defining the container, we have defining the labels, all these stuff properties you can define. So here you can see like description, right? It could be anything, but just to give you a feel how you can define, description is always as a string type and you can define it anything. Then let's say you have something called number, right? It might be an integer, but you can name it anything. For this also, if you wanted to define a minimum or maximum, like how many numbers you can define, let's say replica set we have seen, right? So under replica set, we are giving just a number, 5, 10, or 100, whatever. But if you want to put a limit to that particular property, you can put, right? Let's say I have this replica set. Just to understand, just pretend this is a replica set I am defining, and I'm saying minimum is 1 and maximum is 5, right? So in this file, whenever I'm using this property a replica set, if I'm trying to put number 6 here, it will gonna fail because it is not allowed inside where inside this custom resource definition file, right? So that's way you can put this limit on this, and that's what that we can define here, and we can see that. All right. So that is the kind of theory part for the CRD. Let's see if we have already a predefined CRDs. So here you can see we have few CRDs. Let's say if I am just accessing this issuer, right? So how you can get it? K get CRDs, and you can just output to this as a YAML format. And you will see that it has a very big output, right? You can see that maybe it is not come under on the same screen. Maybe what we will do is we will use a different one, not this one. It was not a good example probably. uh, let's say this cluster issuer, okay, or maybe certificate cert manager, K get CRD, and just get this in the YAML output. Looks like it is also a big, but let's see if we can accept it. Okay, yeah. So here you can see this is the API annotation they have used, right? That's just that internal kind of a label they can put. This is the resource definition file for this API extension. You can see that's what we have discussed. After that annotation, if you see, we have some labels and all this, but under spec, basis on this file, metadata and all, under spec, you can see that the group they have defined is certmanager.io. So whenever you are defining any of the resources using this, what do you call it, that custom resource definition, you need to pass to this group. Group is nothing that the API group. Under the name, you can see that it is a kind of certificate. Plural, you can see that it is certificates. Short name, you can use cert. You can also use certs, right? Singular name is certificate. Here it is S. Similarly, where it went, this one. You can see here that it was a namespaced scope version. You can see that, right? Here you can see that we have a version called these version additional printer colon. If you just print this, right, that information about this. So what all information it gonna print when you describe this? But when you see the name is equal to version, and for this they have defined a different schemas. And under here you can see that the description is type of string, what you can define. Then again you have that kind is description, and all these it is also as a string. So all these things you can see, right? It again bases on your requirement, what is the requirement, and you should know how you can write your custom resource definition, and then you can just write in such a way that it will fulfill your request, right? And all these things you can see it is served as true, and the storage is true. That means that this is the current version we are serving as a API to our different resources. All right, so that was the like pre-built CRDs we have, right? So what I have done is for our demo, I have created a CRD file. It's just a very minimal CRD file. You can see that I'm using the same API extension. I'm using my CRDs. I am just giving some name to that particular CRD, and I am serving, or I am just making it available as a path for cloud.examples.dev API, right? Then I'm just giving a version called version 1 beta, and I'm giving this served as true and storage as true also. So what is that particular stuff means, right? Same, I can serve this as a version 1 beta, and I need to store this as in etcd database. Under this, what I am doing is I am just creating a one type called object, and it has a value is integer, the size. Right? That way you can define that object under its properties. If you are targeting it to some particular namespace, or maybe a dedicated namespace, that you can put here, and here is the name of the, like, the scope of your CRD, whether it's a namespaced or a non-namespaced. Then I'm just giving it a name as my CRD. My CRD is the kind is this, the start learn, and the sort name we can refer it to as a SL. That's what I am doing. So using this CRD, now we will create a one uh, like kind of false object, because I don't have any controller to serve this, but just to show you how a CRD you can create, and how you can create a resource, custom resource, using that custom resource definition file. So first you need to build your CRDs, right? So that your application or your cluster should know, your API server should know, okay, there is something called this, and under this you can accept all this stuff, and you will create it, right? And then you need to create your this one. custom resource definition file. Okay, so let's come to our cluster. What I will do is let's try to create a custom resource without a CRD. So it is in this 156 number file. Let's try to create. And what it is saying is resource mapping not found for a name called mylearn. Why? Because here you can see that what I am saying is I am creating a mylearn and it is mapped to this particular kind start learn, which is getting served under this API version path for cloud.examples.dev/v1 beta. But that is not there, right? You can see that no matches for this in version this, because it is not. Ensure CRDs are installed first. It is giving you as a suggestion as well, right? So now let's do one thing. Let's create our CRD first. K create, and I'm creating my CRD. Now it has created. How you will make sure that it has created? What you can do? You can just run that K8s CRD, and here somewhere you can see my CRD.path for cloud. It is created and it is the timestamp for this, right? That's what you can see. It is in 8th of October, and this is the time for this. There is one more way. What you can do is you can just run API resources, and you can just grep for my CRD. RESOURCS. And here you can see my CRD is working here, right? And it has a short name called SL, and this is getting served under this API version, and this is a namespace scoped version, and this is the kind the start learn, right? So now my CRD is there, right? Now what I will do is I will create my resource, and it is under this file. Okay, it has created. You can see it has created. Let me clear my screen and then I will just show you K get SL, because we do this. We know that okay, there is something called pod which is already getting served under V1, but now we know okay, there is something which is getting served under this start learn under this API, right? So I can just run K get SL, and here you can see what it is doing is this is all the stuff you can define in your CRD, like how you want to make it available. Remember when we were uh, exploring the cert manager CRD, it was showing multiple properties, the visibility, when you describe and all these things, right? I'm not sure uh, whether it will gonna work with the K describe SL, and let's see. And indeed it worked. Yeah, because these are the some basic functionality of any of the CRD which will work. Here it will give you the what is the name, what is the namespace, is there any label, annotation, what is the API version? You can see this is the API version. What is the kind? It is a start learn. What is the metadata? Metadata is nothing, it just give you an internal timestamp or some UIDs. And the spec section only we have that size called 2 and it is accepting as a number, right? Let's do one thing. Let's delete this. Okay, it's deleted. Now let's go inside, and instead of 2, because we have defined it as an integer, right? I would say in the as a string. Now it's saved. Let's try to create now, and indeed you can see that my learn is invalid. Why? Spec.size is invalid value string. Spec.side in body must be in type of integer. Where this value comes from? This value comes from where? This value comes from this particular property, because here you have defined it as an integer. So now whenever you are using a kind called start learn which is getting served under this, it must be an integer. Only and only you will be able to create when you do this, right? So now you can see there is nothing created because the value was invalid, right? That's one thing. There is one more thing I was talking about that if you make it 2, obviously it will work, right? But I was talking about this particular versions, right? Let's do one thing. Let's create one more version here. Okay. Now what I will do is I will just copy this. Okay. And I will paste one more time here. And I'm gonna change this to, let's keep that beta up, and I would say alpha. Okay. Now I have alpha this one, and I will keep this as a storage called false, the previous one. Fine. Let's save it. I will explain you what I'm trying to do. K create hyphen F 56. Let's create this, and K get SL. Okay. Let me clear my screen and let me describe this. So here you can see it is getting served under V1 beta. Fine. But when I see my file called 55, I am serving a 2 version. One is called V1 beta. For that, my resources are already there. They have already there. Now, what I have done is, let's interpret, or maybe let's assume that we have enhanced our CRD, right? We have included few more parameters there, and now I wanted to serve this as a V1 alpha. So you sorry, so you can keep this served as true. What means that using any of these versions, resources can be created. But when you see this storage is false and here is storage is true, so that makes a big difference. Okay, let's try to understand here what it will do. See, when you say this false, right, what will happen is your old resources are already created using this version, and those are at that time was true. True means that already a entry in the etcd using this version. Now what I will do is I will gonna create my new resources using this version, and I want my etcd to make an entry for this one, so that whatever the old resources is using this particular version, they will also will be there. But when I'm creating this new, right, those will be added as a this, and whatever that the previous Kubernetes automatically handle that automatic conversion behind the scene, right? They will automatically get converted to this, and once that is done, maybe you can remove that particular version or you can keep it, right? Now let's see, we have file called this, right? So what I will do is I will just copy this in new YAML, and inside that new YAML I will create my resource called new alpha view alpha 1. Okay. Now before that we need to create our CRD, right? Because we haven't created. Now I would say new learn. Fine. Now if I try directly, I try to create this, it will fail, because as of now system doesn't know that there is something called v1 alpha. So what we will do is we will create our crd first. Okay, now let's delete that k delete crd, and it was the crd. Fine, it is deleted. You can see, because there is nothing is there, right? So that is also good. But the way we haven't deleted it, not work that way. The moment we do is we will do it as a kind of the edit you can do, and then you can define this as a particular thing, right? Now let's create this again. K create hyphen 55. It is created now, and k create hyphen f 56, and k create hyphen f new. There was a typo in the create. Let's fix that. create. And you can see that this time both resources have created. If I just say k get sl, you can see that mylearn is also there and new mylearn is also there. Let's describe one by one. Sl mylearn, it is using v1 alpha. Whereas if I do the same thing for the new, it is using v1 alpha. Okay, maybe we, it should be, but let's see. Uh, okay, let me go inside this file because that is better. Not this one, 55. Earlier we were using V1 alpha, right? So V1 alpha is this one, and it is to, okay. Now I got it. Why it is? See, the reason is V1 alpha is still marked as a storage equal to true, right? But I don't want. I want a previous or maybe the existing custom resources running as a V1 alpha, right? But when I am uh, creating a new resource, I want that to be stored as a v1 beta. Served is equal to true. That means we can create our resources using both versions. But the thing is, the storage equal to true, right? That is the reason our new resources also get stored as a v1 alpha, right? So let's do one thing. This time I will not delete it, okay? K get sl. Now you can see we have two, right? And I would say new cp2, again just give some name, okay? Again .yml, and now I would say again .yml, and this I would okay, I again forgot. Let me fix that first. vi55. So here v1 alpha, right? I want to be this, not this one again. I'm k get crd. I want to be make it live modification. Okay, so for that we know that we can do a edit, and which crd I want to do this one. Now let's go to the version v1 beta that is getting a storage as a false. Make it true and make the v1 is as a false. All right, that's what I have done, and maybe we can add one more property for a new one. Like this is the size, right? So what I will do is type is object is fine. I would say, let's say a message, okay? massg message, and the type will be a string. Fine. And now let's add it. It is edited, right? Now if I see my k get sl is working this as 1, right? And what we have done is we have made a v1 beta as a true, right? So we will say in this beta, and here also we have created as a alpha only, right? That was also make some confusion, but anyways v1 beta, and here we have one more property. So maybe I would say just message, and I will say I am new property from beta version. Fine. Let's try to create now. Create hyphen f again. Okay, start learn version we cannot be handled as a start learn strictly decoding spec dot messages. Okay, so our messages is having some issue. Let's get inside this again, and it looks me fine. Okay, MASS spelling is wrong. I think the battery is low for my keyboard. I need to replace this. Okay, it was message, I believe. And let's try to create now. Already exist. Uh, K get SL new mylearn. Okay, the name we need to change obviously, right? Because new mylearn is already there. So I would say again new mylearn, right? Just giving some random name to make it work, whether it's working or not, just to see. Okay. Now this time you can see that it has created, right? Let me clear my screen, and one more time if I just say k get sl, and this time if I describe, let's describe a mylearn which was created from the v1 alpha. Let's describe the new mylearn that was also created as a v1 alpha, and it has only this. Now you will say, okay, why the message is not coming? See, the message is coming as a part of what you call it, that beta version, right? And that will not come for the old resources, rather it will go come for your new. So here you can see, come on, it is again, there is no, that's wrong. Uh, Not this one. K get CRD, K edit CRD, and this one. Now what I will do is I will just make this alpha served as a false. Okay. False, right? And it is edited. Now let's copy this to final.yaml and edit this final.yaml and just change the name to final. And now let's try what we get for this one. Okay, it has created k get sl, but it is saying resource my crd, the server could not get the requested resources. Yeah, the problem is it is getting cached. It is still okay. Here it is getting beta v1, but the whatever the previous CR what we have done, right, that is not get migrated. That is the reason it is crying. Now you can see that it has changed to beta. Earlier it was alpha, right? And whatever that we have created this final.yaml, the name, let me see what name we have given. We have given this. Now if I just edit SL this one, you can see it is getting served as v1 beta and the message as well. And if I just get this describe as well, it will show you the same thing. Uh, what is that? This one. So here you can see it is coming as a v1 beta and it has a new property which we have set. But why it is not giving me the other one? Because now I don't have, okay, now it is giving, right? Maybe it has migrated, I'm not sure. Let's try. Yes, you can see that it has automatically migrated. We don't have any kind of storage job or something that was failed, right? So what I understood is maybe whenever we are defining our this file, right? So at a time, probably we can serve the both as well. But if you wanted to make it available for that particular new thing, right? Then in that case, we need to make it available for only one version. Because when we were doing V1 alpha as a something called version as a served as a true, storage as a false, what we were getting? We were getting it as a, we have changed. I'm just catting that file, right? But we have edited. So in database, it is false only and it is true only. So don't get confused. But what I'm saying is, like when we are doing this, so we need to make one of the storage false, right? You cannot keep that the serve true and the storage true, right? We need to keep this as a false as well, so that internally also it get automatically migrated, right? Here you can see it was giving some error, but for a time being, when we again get the SL, it is showing me everything. And now instead of new, you can see that the previous also it is giving me. But for this, you can see that there is no message. Why? Because it was never defined in this resource definition file. But for the new definition file, we are getting message whatever we have put, right? So that's how the CRD works, right? CRD, you can serve multiple versions, and you can serve it as a uh, custom resource definition. But in order to get all these real things, right? Like in whatever you are defining, if your task, if you want that has to be done in the real time, for that you need to write down a custom controller, right? That's what you can do. For that, what we have is, maybe I will explain in the next video like how you can do with the help of operators, right? So that was for the day, and this custom versions made some confusion, but it is good to learn now like how we can do it. All right. So I hope it helped you to understand what CRD is and how we can make it available and all these things. And that's it for the day. I will meet you in the next video thing, and I hope you finding it very helpful, and stay tuned for the latest update. Thank you. Bye bye.